The sky above Prime was burning. Ambassador stood at the observation window of Orbital Station 7, watching her world die. She was a being made of living crystal that caught light and turned it into rainbows. But there was no beauty in the light she saw now. Only fire, only death. The swarm had come without warning. One moment the stars were peaceful. The next moment they were gone. Billions of insect-shaped warships had dropped out of hyperspace like a living shadow, blocking out everything. They were eaters. They consumed entire worlds. They had consumed 17 civilizations before. Now they had chosen watched a city burn on the surface below. That city was called Harmony Vale. 3 million lived there, had lived there. The landing ships were already descending, their troops pouring out like black water. Ambassador, a voice said behind her. It was Station Commander, another. His crystal body was flickering with fear patterns. We have lost contact with the southern continent. They have destroyed all communication towers. Did not turn around. She could not look away from her dying world. How many? The southern continent held 400 million citizens. 400 million, gone in hours. Finally turned. Her own body was dim, the light inside her fading with her hope. What about our fleet? Commander made a sound like breaking glass. It was the way of crying. Our fleet is destroyed, Ambassador. They did not even slow down. We had 42 ships. They had millions. Millions. The number was too big to understand. How could anyone fight millions of ships? But they were not supposed to fight alone. That was the whole point of the Galactic Compact. 23 species had signed the treaty. They had promised to protect each other. They had promised that no member would ever face extinction alone. Walked to the communication console. Her crystal fingers moved across the controls. Open a channel to all Compact allies. Use the emergency beacon. Use every frequency we have. Ambassador, they might intercept. It does not matter if they intercept. His voice was hard now, hard like the crystal she was made of. We are already dying. Our only hope is help from outside. She activated the beacon and spoke into the receiver. Her voice went out across the stars, traveling faster than light, reaching every corner of compact space. This is Ambassador of the people. We are under attack by the swarm. Our defenses have fallen. Our fleet is destroyed. Billions of our citizens are dying as I speak. We invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Compact. We call upon all allies to send immediate military assistance. Please, we are begging you, help us. She ended the transmission and waited. The first response came from a species of tall, thin beings with silver skin. Their ambassador's hologram appeared in the station's command center. Ambassador, they said, his face showing sadness. We are deeply sorry for your situation. However, the Republic is currently undergoing internal restructuring. We cannot spare any ships at this time. We will keep your people in our thoughts. The hologram disappeared. Stared at the empty air. Internal restructuring. Her people were being slaughtered, and they were worried about internal restructuring. The second response came from a species that looked like floating jellyfish. Our fleet is engaged in exercises on the far side of our territory. By the time we could reach you, it would be too late. We are sorry. The third response came from the collective. We offer our prayers and our sympathy. Perhaps diplomatic negotiations with the could. Turned off that transmission before it finished. Diplomatic negotiations. They did not negotiate. The ate. One by one, the allies of the found reasons not to help. They claimed they were afraid of spreading the conflict. They said their ships were too old. They simply did not respond at all. Commander stood beside the ambassador, his crystal body now completely dark. They have abandoned us. Said nothing. What could she say? Every promise, every treaty, every handshake and ceremony, all of it meant nothing. When the darkness came, they stood alone. She sat down heavily in the command chair. Below, another city began to burn. She thought it might be Crystal Shore, where she was born, where her family still lived. Had lived. Then the communication console made a sound. A new signal was coming in. Looked at the source coordinates and felt her blood freeze. The signal came from the outer rim, from the quarantine zone. Every star map in the galaxy marked that region with warnings. Extreme danger. Hostile species. Do not approach. It was the home of the humans. The Galactic Compact had spent 2 centuries trying to contain the humans. Their Earth was a nightmare. A planet with a surface that was 70% poison, where the ground shook and mountains exploded, where radiation poured from the sky and temperatures could swing wildly in a single day. Nothing should survive on such a world, but humans did more than survive. They thrived. The Compact had watched humans fight wars against each other, watched them split atoms and build weapons that could destroy their own cities, watched them refuse to die no matter how hard the universe tried to kill them. They were dangerous, unpredictable, violent beyond reason. And now they were calling. "Should I accept the transmission?" Commander asked, his voice shaking. Looked at the burning world below. Her people were dying. Her allies had abandoned her. What did she have to lose? Accepted. The message appeared on the screen. Just one line of text, simple and direct. "We heard you, we're coming." The signature read, Terran United Fleet Earth. Read the message again, then again. They were coming. The monsters the galaxy feared most were on their way. She thought about the stories she had heard about humans, how they could survive injuries that would kill any other species, how they could keep fighting when they should be dead, how they formed bonds with anything, even dangerous animals, and called those animals pets, how they laughed at death and made jokes in the middle of battles. They had never asked the humans for help. No one in the Compact ever asked the humans for anything. The humans were supposed to stay in their quarantine zone, away from civilized space, away from gentle species who could not handle their violence. But gentle allies had abandoned the civilized species, had left them to die. Maybe it was time to see what monsters could do. Stood up and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving toward Prime. She did not know if they were coming as saviors or conquerors. She did not know if they would survive the next few days. But for the first time in hours, she felt something other than despair. She felt a tiny spark of hope. And that was enough for now. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the TUF Indomitable and watched the stars stretch and snap back into place. Hyperspace travel always made her stomach turn, but she never showed it. An admiral did not show weakness. The Indomitable was the flagship of the Terran United Fleet, the largest warship humanity had ever built. It was 2 kilometers long, covered in armor that could take hits from nuclear weapons, and armed with devices that the Galactic Compact had declared illegal. Humanity had ignored those laws. They always did. "Hyperspace exit complete," announced Lieutenant from the helm. She was young, only 26, but she could fly a dreadnought like it was a sports car. "We have arrived at Prime." Looked at the main and felt her jaw tighten. The hung in space before them, blue and green and beautiful, but around it, like flies around a corpse, swarmed the ships beyond counting, blocking out the stars themselves. "Commander," said calmly, "how many enemy vessels?" Commander worked the tactical console. He was a big man, broad in the shoulders, with a face that rarely smiled. He was the best tactical officer in the fleet. Right now, even he looked concerned. "Approximately 3 million warships, Admiral. They range from small fighters to capital ships. Their main fleet is concentrated around the planet. They appear to be conducting ground operations on all continents." 3 million. The human fleet had 47 ships. Looked around the bridge. Every officer was at their station. Every face was calm. They knew the odds. They did not care. "Open a fleet-wide channel," ordered. The communications officer made it happen. Now every human ship could hear the Admiral's voice. "This is Admiral Park to all vessels. We have arrived at Prime. The people are under attack by the swarm. They called for help and their allies abandoned them. We did not." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The enemy outnumbers us by a factor of 60,000 to 1. I will not lie to you and say this will be easy. But I will tell you this. We are humanity. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our evolution. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We climbed out of the mud and reached for the stars. And we did not come all this way to watch innocent people die, because no one else had the courage to help them." She stood a little. "All ships prepare for combat. We break their line in 30 minutes. The channel closed. Around her, the bridge crew began final preparations. There was no fear in their movements, only purpose. A new voice came through the speakers. It was Captain Song Myra of the destroyer Silent Thunder. "Admiral, the ambassador is requesting communication. She seems worried about our presence." Almost smiled. Worried was probably an understatement. They had grown up hearing horror stories about humans, about the who ate poison for pleasure and kept deadly animals as companions. They probably expected the human fleet to be just as dangerous to them as the "Put her through." The holographic image of Ambassador appeared on the bridge. She was made of living crystal, her body catching the light of the display panels and throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. Beautiful thought, and so fragile. One good punch would shatter her. "Admiral Park." The ambassador's voice was careful, diplomatic. "On behalf of the people, I thank you for responding to our distress call. However, I must ask, the Galactic Compact Treaties specifically prohibit." "The Galactic Compact Treaties left your people to die," interrupted. Her voice was not angry, just matter of fact. Every member species found an excuse not to help. The treaties were supposed to guarantee your protection. Instead, they guaranteed your extinction. She paused. "We never signed those treaties, Ambassador, and we do not abandon people who ask for help." His crystal body flickered with colors that did not understand. Fear, confusion, hope, hard to tell. "But why?" the ambassador asked. "Your species gains nothing from this. The compact will punish you. Other species will fear you even more. Why risk your ships and your people for us?" It was a fair question. Had asked herself the same thing when Command gave her the mission. The answer, she had realized, was simple. "Because you called," she said. "Because you were dying and you needed help. That is reason enough for humans." She turned to Lieutenant. "All ships, advance to combat formation. Destroyers in front, cruisers in the middle, the Indomitable takes the center. We punch straight through their main fleet and establish orbital control over the planet." Commander looked up from his console. "Admiral, they are scanning us. They appear confused. Their Hive Admiral is probably trying to understand why 47 ships are approaching 3 million. Let them be confused," sat in her command chair, gripping the armrests. "It will not help them." The human fleet began to move. 47 ships, shaped like arrows and swords, engines glowing blue with power. The ships started to react, turning toward this new threat, forming defensive walls. On the command ship, the Hive Admiral processed the incoming data. The enemy vessels were small in number but strange in design. Heavy armor, powerful weapons, energy signatures that made no sense. And they were not running. They were not hiding. They were coming straight at the swarm like they wanted to fight. The Hive Admiral had consumed 17 civilizations. It had never seen prey behave this way. It ordered the swarm to attack. Millions of fighters launched from their carriers, forming clouds of black metal. They raced toward the human fleet like a wave racing toward rocks. On the Indomitable, Commander counted the incoming fighters. Enemy wave approaching. 40,000 fighters in the first attack group. Impact in 90 seconds. Admiral did not blink. "All ships weapons free, show them what can do." The human fleet opened fire. Beams of light cut through space, brighter than stars. Human targeting systems, built for the fast reactions of Earth's prey and predators, locked onto fighters faster than the aliens could process. Missiles launched by the thousands, each one smart enough to pick its own target. The first wave of fighters ceased to exist in 12 seconds. Commander allowed himself a small smile. First wave eliminated, second wave incoming, 60,000 fighters. Same result, Admiral predicted. She was right. On the command ship, the Hive Admiral felt something new spreading through its collective consciousness. It was a feeling that the swarm had not experienced in 3,000 years of conquest. It was fear. The human fleet continued to advance, a blade of fire cutting through the swarm. Behind them, they left nothing but wreckage and silence. And on Orbital Station 7, Ambassador watched the battle with wide, crystalline eyes. They had come, and they were winning. The battle for Prime would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. They would call it the moment everything changed, the moment the universe learned what could really do. In space, the human fleet danced through the swarm like wolves among sheep. Human ships did not fight the way compact species fought. Compact species formed defensive lines. They protected their flanks. They retreated when outnumbered. Humans did none of these things. Humans attacked. Captain Song Myra drove the Silent Thunder straight into a formation of 50 cruisers, spinning her destroyer through their crossfire like she was threading a needle. Her gunners fired in all directions, hitting ships that were trying to hit each other. 3 more kills, her weapons officer announced. Enemy formation is breaking apart. Myra grinned. Then let us help them break faster. Hard left, full power, take us through their command ship. The Silent Thunder accelerated. On its hull, painted in bright red, were the words, "Knock knock." Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out again and again. Human captains took risks that should have been suicide. Human pilots flew through spaces that should have been too small. Human gunners hit targets that should have been impossible. They could not understand it. Their hive mind calculated odds and probabilities, and the numbers said the humans should be dead. But the humans kept fighting. They did not care about the numbers. On the Indomitable, Admiral watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Green dots for human ships, red dots for. The red dots outnumbered the green by an impossible margin, but the green dots were winning. "Status report," she ordered. Commander studied his console. "We have eliminated approximately 400,000 enemy vessels. The main fleet is falling back toward the planet. Their formation is confused." "They expected us to die," said simply. "They do not know what to do with prey that fights back." Dr. Han, the fleet's chief science officer, looked up from her station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. "Admiral, I am detecting landing ships on the surface. They have troops in multiple cities. The civilians down there." She did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what they did to civilians. Made her decision in less than a second. "Commander, contact Sergeant Major. Tell her we are doing a hot drop. She has 15 minutes to get her Marines ready." Raised an eyebrow. A combat drop into an active war zone while enemy air superiority is still contested. Looked at him with cold eyes. "Is that a problem, Commander?" Almost smiled. "No, Admiral, it is not." In the Marine barracks of the Indomitable, Sergeant Major received the orders and immediately started shouting at her troops. "You heard the Admiral. Full combat gear, drop pods 15 minutes. Move, move, move." Marines scrambled in all directions, grabbing weapons and strapping on armor. The armor was powered, made of layers of metal and synthetic muscle that made every soldier 5 times stronger and twice as fast. On Earth, the armor helped humans survive hostile environments. Here, it would help them survive hostile aliens. Private locked his helmet in place and checked his rifle. He was 22 years old and had never seen real combat. His hands were shaking slightly. Noticed and walked over to him. Her face was calm behind her visor. "First drop?" she asked. Nodded. "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Scared?" He hesitated, then nodded again. There was no point in lying to, she always knew. Put a hand on his shoulder. "Good. Fear keeps you alive, it makes you sharp. Do not try to be brave, Private. Just do your job, watch your team, and remember your training. The rest will take care of itself." Swallowed and nodded a third time. "Yes, Sergeant Major." 14 minutes later, the Marine drop pods launched from the Indomitable. They fell toward Prime like shooting stars, burning through the atmosphere at speeds that would kill unarmored beings. Pod slammed into the ground in the middle of Crystal Shore, one of the largest cities on the planet. The pod doors blew open and she was running before the dust settled, rifle up, scanning for threats. The gravity on Prime was 0.4 Earth standard. 2, it felt like she was flying. She could jump over buildings. She could run faster than ground vehicles. She was a predator in a world built for prey. Troops saw her and opened fire. Their weapons were designed to kill, beings made of fragile crystal. Against human-powered armor, they might as well have been throwing rocks. Did not even slow down. She returned fire with her plasma rifle, and soldiers exploded into pieces. "Spread out," she commanded over the radio. "Secure the civilian shelter 2 blocks north. You are with me. Everyone else clear these streets." The Marines obeyed instantly. They moved through the city like ghosts, deadly ghosts. Wherever they found, they killed them. Wherever they found civilians, they protected them. Private found himself standing guard over a group of children. They were small, their crystal bodies trembling with fear. They looked up at him with eyes that glowed like jewels. One of them made a sound. Translator turned it into words. Are you a monster?" Thought about the question. He was wearing armor that made him look like a metal giant. He was carrying a weapon that could level buildings. To these small, beautiful creatures, he probably did look like a monster. But monsters did not protect children. Monsters did not cross the galaxy to help strangers. "No," said softly. "I am a human. I am here to help you." The child tilted its head. "Why?" It was the same question the ambassador had asked. Why would humans help them? Why would anyone? Thought about his home, about his mother and father about his little sister who always asked him to bring her gifts from space. He thought about what he would want if his family was in danger. "Because someone has to," he said finally, "and we can, so we do." He did not know if the child understood, but it stopped trembling. That was enough. Above the city, the space battle reached its climax. Admiral ordered the Indomitable to fire its main cannon, a weapon powered by a piece of a captured black hole. The beam was invisible to most species, but the results were not. 93 capital ships vanished in a single shot. The Hive Admiral made a decision that had not been made in 3,000 years of swarm history. It ordered a retreat. Across Prime, troops stopped fighting and ran for their ships. Fighters broke off their attacks and fled toward the edge of the system. The swarm, the unstoppable hunger that had eaten 17 civilizations, was running away. On the ground, Sergeant Major watched the retreat and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "All units, this is. Enemy is retreating. Hold positions and protect civilians. Medical teams are inbound." She looked up at the sky, where human ships were chasing the fleeing. Then she looked at the civilians emerging from their shelters, staring at the human soldiers with wonder. They had come to save them, and they had succeeded. News of the Battle of Prime spread across the galaxy faster than light. Every species with access to the communication networks heard the story. Every government received the reports. Every being with eyes watched the recordings. They had answered a distress call. They had faced 3 million enemy ships with 47 of their own. They had won. And now they were not leaving. On the High Counselor sat in his private chamber and watched the footage for the 100th time. His silver skin was pale with shock. His 3 hearts were beating too fast. The recordings showed human ships cutting through the swarm like blades through water. They showed human soldiers jumping across buildings in gravity that should have slowed them down. They showed human medics treating wounded with gentle hands, human engineers repairing damaged shelters, human cooks preparing food that could actually eat. The humans had studied biology. They had brought supplies that matched needs. They had planned for this. They came prepared to help, whispered to himself. They did not come to conquer, they came to save. His aide, a young name, stood nearby. High Counselor, the public is asking questions. They want to know why we did not help them when they called. Closed his eyes. They had claimed internal restructuring. It was a lie. The truth was simpler and uglier. They had been afraid of losing ships, afraid of the cost. The humans had not been afraid, or if they had been, they had gone anyway. What are the other compact species saying? Asked. Looked at his data tablet. They are claiming technical difficulties with their fleet. The collective is praising the humans as heroes of peace. They are pretending the whole thing never happened. And the humans, what are they saying? Hesitated. They are not saying much, High Counselor. They are too busy. Their ships are providing orbital support. Their soldiers are clearing survivors from the surface. Their medical teams are treating over 2 million wounded. Turned off the recording. He could not watch anymore. Every image was a reminder of what his species had failed to do. On Prime, the work of healing had begun. Ambassador walked through the refugee camp that humans had set up in the ruins of Crystal Shore. Everywhere she looked, she saw her people being cared for. Human soldiers stood guard at the entrances, watching for danger. Human doctors worked in medical tents, using strange machines to heal wounds. Human workers carried supplies, built shelters, and cleaned debris. Stopped at one medical tent and looked inside. A young human medic named O was treating a child whose arm had been shattered by falling rubble. The child was crying, its crystal body flickering with pain patterns. Hummed softly as she worked. It was a human melody, strange and beautiful. Translator could not find words for the song, but it did not need to. The child's crying slowed. Its fear patterns faded. The music was comforting it. There you go, said when she finished. The repair gel needs a few hours to set, but your arm will be good as new. Can you be brave for a few more hours? The child nodded, still sniffling. Thank you, strange creature. Laughed. It was a warm sound full of genuine joy. You can call me, and you are welcome, little one. Watched the medic move to the next patient. She thought about all the things she had heard about humans. They were supposed to be monsters, violent, aggressive, dangerous beyond reason. The Galactic Compact had spent centuries keeping them contained, convincing everyone that humans were too primitive to join civilized society. But this young woman had just saved a child's arm while singing to calm its fears. That was not the behavior of a monster. Walked through the camp until she found Admiral Park. The Admiral was standing at a makeshift command center, talking to her officers about supply routes and defensive positions. She looked tired but determined. Admiral said, "May I speak with you?" Turned to face her. "Of course, Ambassador, how can I help you?" Hesitated. There were so many questions she wanted to ask. She chose the most important one. "Why are you still here?" Tilted her head. "I do not understand." "They have retreated. The battle is over. You could leave now and claim your victory. Instead, you are building shelters and treating wounded and feeding refugees. Your soldiers are doing work that is below their training. Your ships are performing tasks that any cargo vessel could do. Why?" Consider the question carefully before answering. "On Earth," she said, "we have many nations and many cultures. We fight each other sometimes. We disagree often. But there is one thing most humans believe. When someone is in trouble, you help them. You do not walk away after the immediate danger is gone. You stay until they can stand on their own feet. She paused. The battle was only the first part. Your people have lost cities, lost families, lost their sense of safety. Winning the war means nothing if you lose everything else. So we stay, we help rebuild, we give your people time to heal. Felt something moving inside her crystal heart. It was gratitude, but also something more, something like shame. The compact species abandoned us, she said quietly. We had treaties with them, we had promises, they left us to die. Nodded, I know. And yet you came. You had no treaties with us, no promises, you were supposed to be our enemies. Smiled slightly, we were supposed to be your monsters. Yes, his body flickered with complex colors. I am beginning to think we were wrong about that. The Admiral turned back to her work, but she spoke over her shoulder. The compact feared us because we are different, because we are strong in ways they do not understand. But strength is not evil, Ambassador. It is a tool. What matters is how you use it. That night sent a message to the Galactic Compact Council. It was a formal complaint, demanding to know why treaty obligations had been ignored. It was also a praise of the humans, describing everything they had done. The message went out across the stars. Species who had spent centuries fearing the Reddit and began to wonder. Maybe they had been wrong. Maybe strength could be used for protection instead of conquest. Maybe the monsters were not monsters at all. On a dozen worlds, beings began to ask their governments a simple question. If we called for help, would our allies come? Or would we need to ask the humans? The answer, everyone already knew, would always be the same. The humans would come. They always did. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Prime. The swarm had retreated beyond the outer rim, running to the edges of known space. Before they disappeared, their Hive Admiral sent one final message to the galaxy. The message said, "We did not know they had protectors. We will not return." It was the first time in 3,000 years that they had admitted defeat. It was the first time in 3,000 years that they had shown fear. On Prime, the rebuilding continued. Crystal Shore was slowly coming back to life. New buildings rose where ruins had stood. Gardens bloomed where fire had burned. Children played in streets that had once been battlefields. Human engineers had helped design the new structures. Human workers had helped clear the rubble. Human soldiers had stayed to provide security while they rebuilt their own defense forces. Slowly, carefully, the humans were preparing to leave. But they had left something behind that would last forever, a friendship. On Earth, in the capital city of Seoul, the Great Assembly Hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Human delegates sat in the front rows, but behind them sat something that would have been impossible 1 year ago: aliens. Ambassadors, their crystal bodies shining under the lights. Observers from species that had once feared humanity. Journalists recording every moment for billions of viewers across the stars. Admiral Park stood at the podium. She wore her dress uniform, decorated with medals that she rarely looked at. She did not think of herself as a hero. She had just done her job. "We did what anyone should have done," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "They were dying. Their allies abandoned them. We had ships and we had the will to use them. There was no other choice." She paused and looked at the faces watching her. Human faces, others. Some have called us monsters, some have called us saviors. The truth is, we are neither. We are human. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We survived because we learned to work together to protect each other, to never abandon our own. She took a breath. And now we have learned that our family is bigger than we thought. They are not our species. They do not look like us. They do not think like us. But when they called for help, they became our people. Because that is what help means. It means you are not alone. In the audience, Private sat with his squad. Sergeant Major was beside him, her arm in a sling from an injury she had taken in the final ground battle. Across the aisle, a young child sat with its family, the same child whose arm had protected in Crystal Shore. The child saw looking and made a gesture that the translator could not interpret, but understood anyway. It was a greeting, a thank you, a memory of a soldier who had called himself human and promised to help. Nodded back and smiled. After the ceremony, Ambassador approached the podium where Admiral was speaking with human officials. She carried something in her crystalline hands, a small object that glowed with inner light. Admiral said formally, "On behalf of the people I present you with the heart of. It is grown from the living crystal of our. It is the highest honor we can give." Accepted the gift carefully. It was warm in her hands, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "Thank you, Ambassador. I will treasure it." Moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. 3 months ago, I feared you. I thought your fleet might destroy us just as easily as I thought humans were monsters wearing the shape of heroes. And now asked. His body shimmered with colors that the Admiral had learned to recognize as joy. Now I know the truth. Monsters do not cross the stars to save strangers. Monsters do not stay to rebuild what was broken. Monsters do not teach their soldiers to be gentle with children. She paused. You are not monsters, Admiral. You are the best of what any species can be. Outside the great assembly hall, the sun was setting over Seoul. The sky burned with orange and gold, painting the buildings in colors of fire. But it was not a destructive fire. It was the fire of warmth, of home, of hope. Sergeant Major walked out of the building with Private beside her. They stood on the steps and watched the sunset in silence for a while. "Think there will be more fights like Prime?" asked finally. Thought about the question. The galaxy was vast and dangerous. They were still out there somewhere. Other threats existed, threats that had not yet shown themselves. Peace was a fragile thing, easily broken. Probably, she admitted. The galaxy is not a safe place. It never has been. Nodded, his face thoughtful. So what do we do? Looked at him. He was young, barely older than a boy, but he had fought well on Prime. He had protected civilians. He had done everything she had asked of him and more. We do what humans have always done, she said. We keep watch, we stay ready, and when someone calls for help, we answer. She smiled slightly. That is who we are, that is what we do. Across the galaxy, species that had once feared humanity were beginning to change their minds. They were strong, yes, violent sometimes, dangerous certainly, but they were also brave and kind and generous. They helped those who needed help. They protected those who could not protect themselves. They did not ask for payment or power or praise. They just helped because it was right. On a dozen worlds, governments began to quietly reach out to Earth, seeking trade agreements and diplomatic relations. On a dozen more, ordinary beings looked up at the stars and wondered if humans might one day come to their world, not as conquerors, but as friends. And on Prime, where the crystal city still glowed with the light of survival, children learned a new song. It was taught to them by human soldiers who had stayed to help, and the words were simple. When the darkness comes, do not be afraid. Call out into the night. Someone will hear you, someone will come. It was a human song, born on a world that tried to kill everything that lived on it. But it had become something more. It had become a promise. And humans always kept their promises. In her quarters aboard the Indomitable, Admiral looked at the heart of glowing on her desk. She thought about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. For better or worse, they had shown who they really were. She picked up the crystal and held it close to her own heart. It pulsed gently, like a living thing. We heard you, she whispered to no one in particular. We came. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright and endless. Somewhere out there, other species lived and struggled and dreamed. Somewhere out there, someone might be in trouble, might be calling for help, might be praying for anyone to answer. And when that call came, humanity would be ready. They always would be.